So we've been talking about defining the competition and analyzing the competition. Let's look at a couple of competitive analysis tools. First, a couple of quotes, planning quotes, of course, again. One of my favorites, we'll scout them in the first half and beat them in the second half. This is a coach that I had when I played college football. He didn't believe in us spending a lot of time looking at the competition until game time. So in many of the games we played, we were behind in the first half and had to try to come back and win games in the second half. Next quote, nothing good can come from underestimating your competition. This is one of my favorite quotes. I use it all the time. I think it's a tendency for lots of companies to underestimate the competition, and I think that's a huge mistake. Another one, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, but rather the size of the fight in the dog. And of course, what that suggests is that when we do competitive analysis, we want to understand the will and desire of the competition. Next, you should learn from your competitor, but never copy. Copy and you die. Of course, this is a quote from Jack Ma, the originator of Alibaba. And then a Walt Disney quote, I've been up against tough competition all my life. I wouldn't know how to get along without it. And of course, Walt was a big believer in the idea that competition helped to motivate you to do better. Some typical competitive analysis tools, product book, battlefield map, and multi-attribute utility models. Today, we're going to talk about battlefield maps. These are great for analysis in markets with many submarkets. Example of this might be the automobile market, or the beer market, or the coffee market, or the soft drink market. It's used when an industry has many products and each firm has multiple offerings. So the layout of the battlefield map is submarkets by competitors. And theoretically, we like to have brands and products and their market shares if possible for each competitor. Then we look for strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. So here's an example of a battlefield map from the soda business back in 2000. And we're going to use the year 2000 because it will allow us to look and see what happened in the future. Here we have Coke, Pepsi, Cadbury, Schweppes as the three major competitors in the soda market in the year 2000. Coca-Cola, of course, has the Coke products. It has Mr. Pibb in the pepper segment. It has Sprite, Barks in the root beer segment, and in the Dew segment, it has a product called Mellow Yellow. This last column represents the shares. 37.8 is the amount of total market share represented by these five brands in these five categories. 43.2% is their total share of the soda market. Pepsi has, of course, Pepsi Diet Pepsi. In this case, they had Storm as their lemon lime product in the year 2000. They had Mug root beer, and of course, they had Mountain Dew. Cadbury Schweppes had Dr. Pepper, 7-Up, and A&W. So let's take a little look at this, and let's see if we can identify strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities. So for Coca-Cola, their most important brand is obviously Coke. They're the market leaders in Coke in the cola segment and Diet Coke in the Diet Cola segment. They also, by the way, are the leaders of the root beer segment with Barks. But that's mostly due to their ability to have soda drinks with Barks on the soda fountain drinks. In the lemon lime market, they have Sprite, and they're now the leader with Sprite. Of course, the one segment where they tend to be lacking is in the Dew segment, right? And in the Dew segment, they have Mellow Yellow versus Pepsi's Mountain Dew. And of course, in the pepper segment, they have Mr. Pibb, which is a very weak second to the originator of this whole sub-market, Dr. Pepper. So what's Pepsi's strength? Well, you have to look at this and be a little bit careful when you make this analysis, because Pepsi's number one brand is Pepsi. But they're second in that sub-market, and they're second in the diet cola submarket because of Coke and Diet Coke. But if you go across and look at the Dew segment, Pepsi is the market leader in the Dew segment. And Mountain Dew has a 7.2% share in 2000 of the whole soda segment. So you could make the argument that the most important brand for Pepsi might be Mountain Dew. So let's take a look at Cadbury Schweppes. Well, Cadbury Schweppes is the leader in the pepper segment with, of course, Dr. Pepper. And then they also have 7-Up, which is a very strong brand in the lemon lime segment, and A&W Root Beer, which is a very well-known brand and probably the most well-known brand in the root beer segment. So they only have 3 entrants in this business, but all 3 have high brand awareness and high brand equity. So if you were Coca-Cola, what would you do? Well, Coca-Cola looks at the pepper segment and thinks, geez, we ought to try to make more inroads against Dr. Pepper. They tried a number of different things to make that happen, and they could never move the needle. Then they look at the Mountain Dew segment, and they say, we need to have something to cut into Mountain Dew's dominant market share. They, of course, used Mellow Yellow in 2000. They switched from Mellow Yellow to another brand in the early 1990s, and that brand was called Surge. And of course, the idea was that brand was positioned as a fully loaded citrus soda. And of course, the idea was it was to go up against Mountain Dew, which was full of sugar and full of caffeine. If you're going up against by the way, if you're going up against a brand that has high sugar and high caffeine, perhaps Mellow Yellow is not the best name. So what would Pepsi do? Well, Pepsi has no entrance in the pepper business. They tried a couple of Pepsi tried a couple of pepper products. One was called Dr. Slice, but they never had any luck. And they finally came to the conclusion if Coca-Cola couldn't make a big entrance into this market, they probably wouldn't be able to either. The other market where they're extremely weak is the lemon lime market. And so Pepsi originally had Slice in this market, and in around 1998, 1999, they added the product Storm. They had absolutely no success with this. So in the mid-2000s, in the early 2000s, they decided to take another run at the lemon lime market. After all, Sprite was the leader in this market. 7-Up had another big chunk of the market, and they were a very, very distant third. So they looked around and they decided that what they really needed was a name change. And they eventually came up with, of course, Sierra Mist. Now, Sierra Mist is actually a play on Mountain Dew. And so the name was sort of a joke in the Pepsi organization of how they came up with Sierra Mist. So if you're Cadbury Schweppes, what do? Well, the 2 largest submarkets are colas and diet colas. Together they have 48% of the whole market. That is, virtually half of the soda business is in colas, and Cadbury Schweppes doesn't have an alternative in the soda business. So what might they do? Well, of course, one option that they have is to buy RC Cola or develop their own colas. Cadbury Schweppes looked and looked and looked at this and decided that they couldn't make inroads into this, and they preferred to have strong brands. So what Cadbury Schweppes' strategy has been since the year 2000 is to try to strengthen these 3 brands, Dr. Pepper, 7-Up, and A&W Root Beer. And they have had success at all of those and are still a serious competitor in this business. In summary, the battlefield map is a great tool if you are in a situation where you have submarkets and companies have offerings in most of those submarkets. This competitor analysis might be the single most important aspect of any market opportunity analysis and marketing plan, and the battlefield map is a very powerful tool.